Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Book Nymph Live, and we are with Linda Riesenberg Fisler today. Today, we will do a live Q&A, so if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments, and we'll try to get to them. So, let's get started. Hi, Linda. How are you today?
I'm fine. How are you, Kenya? I always want to say Nicole because of my character and you know what we talked about at the release party. So,
Absolutely.
How are you feeling?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well. Had a bunch of errands to run this morning, but other than that, doing pretty good.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. So we've been looking forward to this day for quite a while, and we're finally here. So
yeah,
let's get started. How about you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from?
Well, I live just north of Cincinnati, Ohio, in a real small, well, actually it's not that small. It's a town between Cincinnati and Dayton, hence the name Middletown. And we actually decided to live here in Middletown because my husband worked in Dayton and I worked in Cincinnati. So we split the drive between us, and we've been living here for about 20 years. I grew up actually outside of Cincinnati in a place called Reading. And the joke right now, you know, Princess Kate and Prince William had a baby, and then they showed on Facebook, they showed the birth certificate, and she had Reading written down as the place of her birth. So now we're all claiming we're we're part of royalty. So
that's amazing.
yeah. So it was the biggest surprise because my cousins and I were like, Reading? Wow, we really are princesses. Cool.
So can you tell us what inspired you to write your first book? Well, this is not your Blind Influence is not your first book, correct?
Well, actually, it's the first published book that I've done. Yeah, I did some I'm an artist as well, and I did some work or some real fast instruction books on art, but I don't really count those as being an author or towards my authorship. So Blind Influence is the first book, and then while that was being published, I kind of wrote a little short story prequel called Blind Intention, which talks about each of the three characters. So Blind Influence, it takes place in 1979. Blind Intention, which is the prequel, takes place in 1964, and it's three short stories on Nycole Cooper, who's the female lawyer and the protagonist in the book, and then Sean Atkins, who's the MI6 agent, and then Senator Robert Jenkins, who is also one of the what I call the main characters in the book. It's all of the books will center around those three in particular.
Okay. Do you have a typical? Do you have a specific writing style?
I just write.
Yeah.
I've been writing since I was a kid, and so I guess I just the funniest story I guess I could probably tell here is I signed up for writing in two different ways. I signed up at an English writing course down at UC, University of Cincinnati, and we walked in, and there were probably about 15 of us, and we were all sitting in class, and the professor does what the professors usually do. And it was just, we kind of all sat there and we were looking at one another and giving each other kind of weird looks and stuff. And we turned in, she gave us our first assignment, we turned it in, we got it back. I think the highest grade from everybody that I talked to, I think was like a D. And then she turned around and she said, this is the best sentence ever written. And she wrote, Jesus wept up on the board. And we all kind of sat there and looked at it. Now, I'm not going to disagree that that is a beautiful sentence and it conveys a lot. I'm not disagreeing that fact at all. But we just kind of all looked at one another, and it just got worse from there. It got to the point where she and I were arguing over the use of compound sentences and complex compound sentences and all that kind of stuff. And I just remember these words coming out of my mouth of, I think I'm past the point of see spot run. and everybody in the class started laughing, and I knew it was time for me to leave because I was not going to pass that class. So that was one thing. And then the next thing I did is I took a journalism course, and the professor and I disagreed on how to sensationalize something. So the reason why I don't work at CNN today is because I don't believe in rushing to judgment and just keep putting all these facts out there to condemn someone when the media doesn't have the facts to begin with. I mean, they're just making this stuff up as they go along, so I can't watch TV for very long, or the media for very long, without me throwing my remote at the TV set. So I guess between those experiences, I just kind of got very discouraged about worrying about what kind of writing style I had or anything like that. I'm more of a storyteller. So I go in that. I don't really do narratives very well, or I don't do them very often, I guess I should say, because I did actually put a narrative in a contest here. That's actually, I'll find out if I made the short list, I guess, tomorrow.
Well, good
so
luck.
yeah. So that would be like the first narrative I wrote. So I'm kind of like the person sitting on the outside of the story and just telling a story, I guess, is the best way of saying that.
Well, very good. You mentioned that you were an artist as well. Can you tell us how that has impacted your writing, or a little bit about your artist career?
The interesting thing, I think it's the other way around, where my writing has influenced my art career, because I do a lot more writing about art and get a lot more published about writing about art than I do with my actual artwork. I've won a couple contests with my art. I consider myself a fine artist. I am in a gallery here in Cincinnati called Isley Gallery of Fine Art, and I guess I've been painting for about 20 years. I actually left P&G to be an artist, so I'm just kind of new to this writing game, actually trying to get published. Like I said, I've been writing since I was a kid, so as a matter of fact, I think my brother had a lot of fun going through my parents' house. Both my parents have passed, and he was cleaning the house out so that we could put it back on the market, and I'm sure he went through everything I've ever written, because there was still stuff up in my bedroom that I had written. So he probably had a fun time with that. So.
Well, congratulations on your first published novel, Blind Influence. The reviews are coming in, and they're very good. Can you tell us a little bit about the synopsis of Blind Influence?
Yeah, I guess the one-line sentence that we've been using, or that I've been using, is it's kind of like Jason Bourne meets the good wife in The West Wing. And the reason why I say that is because there's a spy who's Sean Atkins. He's an MI6 agent, and he's had this, I don't want to say, well, it's a relationship with a assassin. He meets them, that's part of what Blind Intention goes into. He meets the serpent while he's being trained to become a British agent, and he ends up leaving the academy, which is at Fort Monkton, right outside of Portsmouth. He ends up leaving that to follow, or actually befriend the serpent, and they kind of work together with the IRA, and Sean being in an undercover role naturally. And then, so as things progress, they become adversarial, and that's kind of where Blind Influence picks up. It starts off with Sean hot on the trail of the serpent, and then naturally, there's a number of things that happen between the two of them through the years, and so Blind Influence starts with him in Paris trying to figure out what the serpent's next move is, and then Nycole Cooper, who is an attorney, ends up getting involved in this whole scenario that's going on between Sean and the serpent, because she and Sean are the only two people in the world that can identify the serpent, and actually be able to put him in the place, which is Washington, D.C., when he commits a crime, the serpent. And then Senator Robert Jenkins comes into play, is a very powerful senator. He's from a Democrat from North Carolina, and he is on the Intelligence Committee. And what you find out later on in the book is there's a relationship that happens between Sean and Robert Jenkins, which I don't want to give too much away, but they know each other. And so there's this nice little triangle that's going on between the three of them. Sean has a lot of demons in his background, and so does Robert Jenkins, and a lot of things start to come into play as things start to heat up between the three of them, and also the hunt to get the serpent, to bring the serpent to justice. Does that does that tackle it? There's a lot in this plot. A lot of stuff goes back and forth. I've heard words. Again, I'm not saying these are words that people have sent to me in emails, because I encourage my readers to write to me as well as post reviews. But they say it's page turner. It's gripping. It's got a very great plot that's very gripping and holds their attention. So those are all very kind words, and I appreciate those very much. So.
I agree with those words. The story is very multi-layered, and it has a lot of intrigue, which will appeal to anyone that loves a good suspenseful thriller, and the characters are all amazing. So you did a very good job. And
thank you.
I believe you're welcome. I believe you just got an honorable mention at the Paris Book Festival.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That was. That was a shock. It really was. It was, and I guess that what I need to do is preface this a little bit. With my art, I have probably spent thousands and thousands of dollars to try and get into a semifinals of a competition, to just get into a show, let alone get an award. So. I was sitting here one night in my house, and I was out on the internet, and I found this Paris book show, and I went, okay, book starts in Paris, there's a book show, why not? So I went ahead and entered it in the show, and I thought, it's not going to win anything. I mean, I for 20 years I've been trying to get recognized as a fine art artist. There's no possible way my first book will win an award. There's just, it's just not going to happen. So I went out and I sent it out, and then the other day, about 3 days ago, they sent a note saying that the winners have been announced. So I went out to the website, I clicked on it, and the only thing that came out of my mouth when I saw the name, under honorable mention, it said Blind Influence, Linda Riesenberg Fisler, and I looked at it and I went, oh my God. And then I just started shaking. And I just kept saying, oh my God, and my voice starts shaking and all this, and my husband's in the other room, and he comes running in, he's like, what's the matter, who died, and I'm like, no, nothing would come out of my mouth except oh my God. And then I finally said, my book won honorable mention at the Paris Book Festival, and he just kind of looked at me and said, what? So I repeated it again, and then tears started flowing, and it was just like, and then I said to myself, so this is what it feels like to win an art competition, So it's like, okay, this is pretty good. So good feeling. I like that.
It was very well deserved. I'm glad you took a chance. You're welcome. So would you say, who would you say is your biggest supporter?
Oh, that's a hard one. I've got, the reason why I'm laughing is because it's, naturally my husband Tom puts has a lot of patience, because he'll be wanting to do something and I'll be typing away on a story. So naturally he supports me, and I have two really good friends, Jamie and Deb. They're very supportive, and then I have two cousins and my aunt, who, bless her heart, is in her 80s. She would probably just die me saying her age, but she and my cousin Gail and my cousin Patsy are very supportive of all I do, including my writing. So I've got a really nice support system in place, and I tend, you only hear about the good things. Like, if I hadn't won anything at the Paris Book Festival, nobody would have known that I entered it. So.
Well, good job.
Thanks.
You're welcome. It's good to have a good support system.
It is.
Yeah. How long does it usually take you to write a book? Like, how long did it take you to write Blind Influence?
Well, that one's a tough one because I actually started it back in 1979, which is why it's set
That's awesome.
in 1979. Yeah. And so I guess I have to explain a little bit. It usually doesn't take me 30-some years to write a book. But I guess what I should have done was brought in my big stack of how much handwritten scenes I've had written on there. But back in 1979, I graduated from high school. My parents asked me, do you want to go to college? And I said, yes. And they said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to go out to University of Southern California, and I want to be a director. And my parents looked at me like, yeah, and we're going to go take off for Mars tomorrow, you know, and it's like, that isn't going to happen, Linda. And I said, well, then I don't want to go to college. And they were like, no, you can go to UC. And I'm like, no, I don't want to go to UC. I want to go to USC, just like George Lucas, and I want to be a director. And she's like, that's not going to happen. So we went through, you know, a number of conversations, and I decided, well, you know, if I can't do that, then I really am not going to go to college. So I started working at Procter & Gamble. And, of course, you're 18 years old, you're working in a business environment, big Fortune 500 company, and my head was still in the clouds. I was still writing stuff, and then, like, I call it the corporate world reality hit in, and for 26 years I worked at Procter & Gamble. During that 26 years, any chance I possibly could get to write, I took. And I would, well, when I was single, I would come home on a Friday night from work all week, work all night, all through the night, get a couple hours of sleep on late Saturday morning, get up, write continually through Saturday night, and then into Sunday, and then go to bed about like 8 o'clock on Sunday and get enough sleep so I could get up and actually function on Monday morning at work. And then I would also work in the break area or at my lunch. So constantly you would always see me sitting there scribbling in the break room on a pad of paper with a pen and just catching any scene that came to my mind. And then about I can't remember exactly what year it was, but Star Trek: The Next Generation was on TV, and I was really big into science fiction and science fantasy, and I decided that I was going to try to write a script for Star Trek: The Next Generation, and I sent it off, typed it all up, sent it off, and I was even brash enough to send it directly to Gene Roddenberry.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, he signed for it too. I sent it registered mail, and he signed for it. So I actually have his autograph somewhere on here on a green slip of paper that had for mail registration back then. And Eric Stillwell, who ended up being a big name in the Star Trek Next Generation area, sent me a rejection letter back. And inside the rejection letter, I still have it. It's downstairs in my studio. But it's he had his nicely worded, well-written rejection letter with a lot of encouragement about what I needed to do. So he sent me submission guidelines. He gave me a little hint on what they were looking for in the letter. And then he gave me a list of agents, because the last line said, we never accept any scripts unless they come from an agent. So enclosed, please find the list of agents. So I had this list of agents with circles drawn around who I should contact. And me being in my 20s went, no, it's just a rejection. They do that for everybody. And I threw it aside. And I got that out about a year ago, and I'm looking at it, and I've just started banging my head against the wall and said, how stupid were you? So I said, well, if Eric Stillwell in that little script saw some hope, there's got to be some hope here. So I went in and I started rounding up all of my stacks of handwritten notes for Blind Influence. And I started reading through them, and it took me in all honesty, it took me about a year to compile all of that, type it all out in Word, and create an outline I created the outline from it first, and then started typing everything out in Word, changing some stuff around. And so it took me about a year to really organize all of that. And then it took after I had it all typed up, about 6 weeks to start editing and proofing it, and going out to find a publisher to publish it. Because at this point, I haven't actually self-published. I used a little vanity press to publish it, which naturally ties your hands in some ways when you start talking about pricing. But Yeah, so but I didn't know enough to actually like. I wanted to take that time when they were actually putting the book together. I wanted to take the time to learn how to do these things on my own around formatting and getting covers together and learning about the whole self-publishing business. So while they were actually doing the stuff I didn't know how to do, I was out learning how to do it. So
That's fantastic.
yeah,
Good.
so hopefully the next one will be totally self-published. So
Good. That's great. Do you
yeah.
ever find that you suffer from writer's block?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Kent.
Do you ever find that you suffer from writer's block? Do
Oh,
you ever
writer's
get,
block.
yeah.
Uh, no.
Good. Well,
It's
that's
probably the
great.
easiest way. I have so many ideas running around in my head and so many voices, and there was a time when I actually thought I was schizophrenic. So it was like, what do you mean you don't hear people talking in your head? I hear adults talking in my head all the time. So, and I actually thought it was a little strange, so I never really talked about it. And then I met an artist friend of mine named by the name of George Gallo, who is a screenwriter, director, and producer out in Hollywood. I actually know him because he's also an artist, and I interviewed him on my Art Chats with Linda Fisler, which is my my art personality. And I started talking to him like offline. We were talking to each other, and I said, George, I said, really, you hear voices in your head? And he goes, oh my God, every day. And I was like, okay, we're fine. I'm not crazy. So it was good. So yeah,
I agree.
but
I hear them too. It's the characters, right?
yes, they're with you all the time. It doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, I'm also trying to write a little fantasy thing because Tolkien's a big, one of my favorite artists, and so I'm writing this thing called Tales of Regenus, and poor Arten's in the back of my mind. He's my main character in there, and he keeps coming in and going, hey, hello, remember me? It's time to start writing on me. And I was like, okay, I just don't have enough hours in a day. So right now, no problem with writer's blocks.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Who is your favorite author? You just mentioned Tolkien. Is he your favorite?
Oh yeah, J.R.R. Tolkien is absolutely probably my number one favorite. And part of that was, naturally I watched The Lord of the Rings, and for Christmas I told Tom, I said, what I want you to do is find the 7 original books that Tolkien wrote for The Lord of the Rings. And I said, I want those 7 original books, which when the movie became big, they basically condensed this and they put it out in paperback in 3 books. And there was so much that was taken out of that, and I knew that. So that's why I asked for this little box set of the 7 original books, because, and some folks don't realize that they were just these little books about, an inch or so wide, and actually got it in the other room. But I started reading those, and it was so different, totally different experience reading that. And I watched a lot of production video. I got the extended version of Lord of the Rings downstairs, and it had a lot of conversations with Fran, who was the writer of the script, and she also read the 7 original books, and she was saying that trying to condense that down into something that could be told in a movie was very, very hard. So there are poems that he wrote in this. There's a whole different description of the worlds that live down in Middle Earth and the cultures, and it's just really amazing what he created. And I could see why, I think it was C.S. Lewis that wrote the Chronicles of Narnia was a little bit jealous of
Yeah.
Tolkien, because it's just fantastic. He created the whole language, the Old Elf language that's used by everybody now. He started to create that because he was such a dialect. He was so interested in dialects and languages that he started to create that own language. So that was just fascinating to me. And I thought, well, I didn't want to pick up writing about Middle Earth because, number one, the family doesn't want you to, but number two is, that was his world. So I'm trying to create my own little world. I find that as the ultimate goal in a writer to do that. And then other art authors that are my favorite, that's Ken Follett, Eye of the Needle. I found that the other day and was like, oh yeah, I remember reading that. So that had a little bit of influence on me as well. Robert Ludlum, wonderful writer. I only read a couple of his books because by the time Carlos the Jackal escaped about 4 or 5 times, I had had enough. And there's this line that you got to draw where you can only string people along for so long. And he about halfway through the second book, he was starting to lose me. And I'm talking about the Bourne series, Bourne Identity, and all of those. I read Identity, and at the end, Carlos gets away, and I said, okay, I'll give you one more book. And I started reading the second book, and he gets away like 2 times before he gets to the end of the book. And of course, he gets away at the end of the book again, and I'm sitting there going, really, Robert, you're really talented. I think you can come up with another guy for this guy to hunt down. So I kind of like threw the book against the wall and said, that's it. And that's actually when I started writing Blind Influence. And I was actually writing it more from a spy novel than I was from the way that it came out. I actually backed off of doing all the spy stuff in the novel because I wanted Sean to be there, but I didn't want Sean to be the total focus of that. I wanted the 3 of them and the relationships to be more the focus of the books.
So what are you reading now?
I'm reading all of my notes for Love is Blind, which is the sequel.
Oh, that's great. So that answers my next question. What are your current projects? So you're working on the sequel now.
I'm working on the sequel, which is Love is Blind. And there's a little hint. The first book ends with those 3 words, Love is Blind. And so there's a little teaser for you for the next book. So I'm reading all those. I'm writing all those. And I wrote about... I've got about 60,000 words written on that I actually have to go back and read and comb through and change, because I'm so far along, but I've missed some things that I want to start adding in. So I'm in the middle of doing all of that. Also rereading some of the stuff that I wrote for the Tales of Regenus, Discovery of the Oracle, which is the first book in that series. So I'm rereading that as well, and I do have a stack of books that I should read sitting next to me, but I don't really have the time to spend on reading for fun. I'm usually doing research or writing or reading what I wrote so that I can rewrite it or make it better or clean it up, whatever, something like that. So I hate to disappoint folks, and the weird thing is if I do get some time to read, I end up going back to Tolkien's books and reading those 7 books just because like I said, I think they're so well written and they really tell a story.
Yeah.
Sometimes too much for me, but it just I don't know, it just helps me think about how where he was and what he was doing. And then I guess the third thing I'm reading is I'm editing my From Brush to Palette Knife art instruction book. So that's the next thing that'll be coming out. Yeah. So.
Oh, lovely. If you had to do it all over again, would you change anything in Blind Influence?
In Blind Influence? Probably not. I'm actually pretty happy where Blind Influence is. If you're going to ask me if I'd change everything in my life up to now, I'd probably say, I wouldn't work at Procter & Gamble, but...
Let's see. Is there anything you find particularly challenging when you're writing?
These are hard questions. When I write, it's like... I guess what I probably shouldn't do is yell at my husband when he starts to talk to me when I'm in the middle of writing. So I'll be sitting there writing and he'll ask me a question. And it's like, what? Because all of a sudden I have to come out of that world and come back into this world. And I just look at him like, do you realize where I was? Like, I was in Washington, D.C. and you pulled me away from there. But I guess the challenging part for me isn't so much the free writing and getting everything down. The challenging part for me is editing and proofing. And thank God for Esther Price Candies, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't get through editing. But that's probably the hardest, and it's because I like to write so much, I like to free write so much that it is very, very hard for me to go back and continually read over the same material, trying to find all of the mistakes and the typos and the, you know, timeline issues and things like that. That's probably the hardest part.
Oh, good. Do you have any advice for other authors or writers?
Actually, it's kind of interesting as I was talking with someone this morning who described himself as a frustrated author, and I just kind of laughed because it's like, I guess I'm so blessed that, you know, the first book out, we just started actually. I consider the official publish date for Blind Influence to be May 1st, and you know, here we are on May 14th, and I have an honorable mention already on the book. So I guess I feel very, very blessed that has happened that way. And when I talk with other authors who, you know, tell me that they're frustrated because they've been trying to work through and get things out there, and you know, we all have frustrations, and it's just a matter of do what you love, and the rest will come to you. And just try to remain as positive as you can, because remember that negative attracts negative things and positive attracts positive things. So if you continue, and that sounds, I know it sounds so hokey, and it's like, yeah, but you know, it really is true that, you know, I know the frustration because I've gone through it on the art side. It's very frustrating, and I got to the point where it's like I don't do it for anyone else but me. So on the art side, you know, I'm painting for me. So I guess I started when I went into publishing, actually publishing writing, you know, in books. It was kind of like, well, I'm kind of doing this because this book always wanted me. It was a story that wanted to be out there and wanted to be told. And if, you know, if my friends are the only one that read it, that's no different than where I was when I was 8 years old and my friends and I were writing plays and putting them on for our other friends. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's like we always did it for our friends. So, you know, I guess it really does mean something when folks say, don't paint a painting because you think it's going to sell. Don't write a story because you think it's going to sell. You have to write what is inside of you, and it will find the audience that it's supposed to find. And it will find it eventually. It's not going to find it when you first open the door and put it out there, but it will grow as long as you keep by its side and support it and put it out there and stay behind it. And something that you've written from your heart and something that you really feel is something that you want to say, or a story you want to tell, that will find the right audience given the time.
That is amazing advice. Really appreciate it.
Well, and don't get frustrated about it. You know, I mean, I have got a number of friends who are reading this book, and I get an email probably, like I said, I've been officially out there since, you know, this is the 14th day, and I've gotten, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 emails already from people who have been reading it, and then they just come back and talk about, you know, how gripping it was and how well it's been written, and you know, how I didn't want to put the book down, and you know, and these are basically just friends and people here in the little town I live in who are reading it, that are getting back to me and just telling me how much they really enjoyed it. And now they're sitting there going, so when's the sequel coming out? And I'm like, will you let me launch this book, please? Well, like others to read it too. Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, I'm going to have to come up with some short stories or something that's going to have to keep these guys entertained until I can get the other one written. So
I think it's time for movie rights. And converting
you know,
it to a screenplay.
You know, everybody keeps saying that to me. Everybody who has read the book has come back to me and said, this needs to be a movie, or I can see this as a movie, or something like that. And I'm like, you know, I got my fingers crossed, because I'm going to be the person that's going to be standing. I'm not going to direct it, okay, because I didn't go to school for directing, but I am going to be standing behind that director going, yeah, this is my book.
Well, I wish you good luck with that. I would love to see this movie. I agree with all of your fans. It really reads well like a movie.
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it as a movie. So,
yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit at the release party, who we wanted to play Sean and who we wanted to play,
exactly.
you know,
I
Nycole,
like your cast.
and all that. I like my cast. Those are people I wouldn't mind meeting, I'll tell you.
So lastly,
I hope they like cougars. So.
Lastly, do you have anything specific that you would like to say to your readers and fans?
I didn't catch the last part, Nicole.
Do you have anything that you'd like to say to your readers and fans?
Oh, I thank you for reading it first of all, and putting your faith in me to actually purchase it and read it, and I hope it takes you on a wonderful adventure, and that you find it as entertaining as I found writing it, and spread the word. Tell other people they have to read it too.
Excellent. That was very, very good. It was lovely talking to you today, Linda.
Yeah.
And we are going to talk about your book now and let everyone know where they can find it. So right now, Linda is on tour. You can find her tour on, yes, that's a lovely cover. Yeah, show it off. Is that the hardcover?
That's the hard copy.
That's amazing. That looks great. I need one of those.
Well, I'll sign one and send it down to you, sweetie.
Thank you. So you can find Linda's book on Amazon.com. It's currently 40% off on Smashwords.
Yes.
And Kobo, correct?
And Kobo, yes. So Smashwords and Kobos, you can get formats for your Kindle. You can get formats for your Nook. Smashwords especially, I think there's like 7 or 8 different formats that you can look at. So they have one for everything.
Excellent, excellent. And what is your website?
My website that contains both information on my art and my book writing is lindafisler.com. LINDAFISLER.com.
Perfect. And we can find her on Twitter at @LFisler and on Facebook at Blind Influence, correct?
Blind Influence is the book page, yes. And I'm also, I don't really have a personal account. I mean, I have a personal account, but I accept friend requests from anyone that would like to be friends and talk about writing and art and put up with my dinner suggestions and recipes that I usually post. And sometimes my sarcastic wit, too. So.
Well, fantastic. She's currently on a month-long blog tour. You can find her blog tour on thebooknymph.com and follow each of her days. She has a $50 Amazon gift card giveaway going on right now. You can also have a chance to win some of her amazing art. So I would definitely enter. Do you have some you can show us? Awesome.
Well, I don't know. Let's see. That I can't go in the wrong way. There we go. That is actually where I spent. That's in France. That's in France.
Yes.
And I went bike riding through France, and that's where we stayed. It was a little place called Mas de Flore, and it was beautiful. And then this is from when I was in New Zealand. I probably can't see it because it's got plastic on it. Let me. It's little greeting cards. Where is it? There we go. 3 little boats.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so
very
impressionistic style.
Well, I wish you so much luck. You really deserve all of the great things that have happened to you so far, and I believe it's only going to get better. So thanks for chatting with me today.
Yeah, thank you. You've been
welcome.
A big help, Kenya. I really appreciate everything you've been doing for me. So it's been fun meeting you. So
thank you. Likewise.
Yeah.
So we're going to stop broadcasting, and we will see you guys on Twitter, Facebook, and Linda's website. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.